I'm live. Welcome. G'day. Stephen Travers here. Look, tonight, this was originally called The Challenges of Learning to Draw. But in the end, I think titling it something like Discouragement when we learn to, or dealing with discouragement when we learn to draw was probably, or on our drawing journey, not so much particularly learning to draw, but discouragement on our drawing journey was probably a more accurate description of the direction that the points I put together was taking. So, yeah, so discouragement, because I've become aware. Hi there, Jessica. I've become aware that um, g'day there, Alihan. I get lots of comments fairly consistently across my videos, and this is something that I wasn't expecting. Yeah, I'm doing good, Ziad. Um, that I wasn't expecting, of people who say that they used to draw or do some sort of art, but they've had a lengthy period where they just stopped. Like there were problems and they just gave up. And there was this lengthy period, and sometimes it's years and sometimes it's decades. G'day, Steve. Sometimes it's decades where they didn't do anything, and they're just coming back to it now. And often they're saying, I mean, the nice thing is that often they're saying my videos have been helpful, which is lovely for any teacher creator to hear. But more importantly, it sort of got me thinking, there are so many people who have had 10, 20, 30, 40 years of not producing any art when they used to, and they're doing it again and they're enjoying it now. But there's all these years in between where that would be used to. Well, all these years in between where they haven't. And like, well, it's kind of a shame if in those years they wanted to and otherwise could have, except that they'd got kind of so discouraged by the whole process and where their drawing had gone that they kind of felt there was no point, or they just didn't have the energy or the strength, the enthusiasm to continue. So I thought, why is it that we get discouraged when we draw or really do any creative process? And so I was trying to sort of put together thoughts on that. But if any of you have any specific thoughts, thinking about why you may have had periods of discouragement, or an ongoing issue of discouragement that you have to deal with as you continue your journey, then that would be great. If you could put them on the chat, and we can all have a look, and that can give some direction as well. I mean, like, the reasons that discourage us on our drawing journeys are often very different, because none of our journeys are exactly the same. So, and sometimes, well, yeah, I know about being old and retired, Steve. Maybe it goes with the name. Um, but just having available time doesn't necessarily mean it's easy to start. There can be all sorts of issues in our head. Perfectionism, yeah, yep. I'm actually, perfectionism is a point down here in my bullet points to make sure I cover. So I will talk about. Thanks, Leo. That's great, and I'm really glad that my content encourages people to keep pushing on, because that is important. Schumann, you need to learn to draw. Yeah, and but Ziad, like, sometimes we run ahead too far too quickly as well, and so we set ourselves up for discouragement. Um, and again, that's another point we'll talk about. And one of the problems I think we have, and if I'm not careful, I'll totally lose touch with all my points. But one of the problems we have is that in this online internet, and particularly YouTube day, uh, we we can self-taught teach. I mean, there is lots of material there, but if we don't know how to navigate the material and find the material that's worthwhile for us, we can spend a lot of time in the wilderness looking at things that don't really help us, listening to advice that is possibly not even helpful advice, and we lack the ability, the framework to realize that, because not every video is a good video, not every teacher is a good teacher, and not every advice is helpful for us with where we're at that given point. Not liking your work and feeling that you won't improve. Yeah, well, why do we feel that we're not going to improve? There are reasons for that too. But let me start with some of my points. But thanks for those comments, and please, if anyone has any further comments, please put them on. But I think of drawing or any creative process as like a journey, and we're navigating certain paths in certain ways at certain speeds, and we have some idea of the destination we want to get to, and that can be a destination in terms of time and method, in terms of actually improving our skills, and it may be a destination in terms of what my art will mean for my life. So maybe I want to have a small business that's based on my creative output. I want to have a store where I make a lot of money from print on demand things of my original artwork. I want to be an artist who exhibits and who sells and who makes a living, who gets asked to do commissions. So that might be my end goal. And so the amount of encouragement or discouragement I'm feeling is not just connected with the actual drawing that I'm doing, but it can also be connected with the place I'm trying to get to, bigger picture, and whether I feel that I'm going to get to that place, or whether I feel like I'm falling short, or I'm not going to have time, or I discover things about being an artist and I start to wonder now whether I can. And so I start to lose touch with perhaps what was motivating me in the first place. So there are all sorts of ways that discouragement can kind of come in, and it partly depends what we were wanting to achieve. Because when I'm feeling discouraged, it's telling me that something I was wanting to have happen isn't happening. And there's a certain amount of resilience to that, I think, built into most of us. But if this goes on for long enough, then we can start to despair that possibly we'll ever overcome this. And therefore, we're not going to get to the place either in our skill development or in the long-term development of our art life. Something different, Flame. Okay, yep. Whereas people and Pet Steve about the things I don't do, but that brings up an issue that I will bring up as well. Look, the first area I put down, discouragement, because I don't see any progress in my work. So that's what is that what Kimberly's, was it Kimberly said a little bit, not liking your work and feeling you won't improve. Well, yeah, like progress is really important for motivation. Really important for motivation. Yeah. I've only ever really tried to lose weight once in my life, when I put an awful lot of weight on, and I saw a photo of me and I thought it was someone else, and when I realized it was me, I thought, and I managed to lose just a couple of kilos in the first week, but seeing the difference in the numbers for me was incredibly motivating, and that let me continue with that, because I could see a difference. So being able to see some sort of progression in what we're doing is really important, and it's good evening for me, Ian. But yeah, I hope it's a sunny morning in Canada there where you are. But I mean, when I talk about progress, so what progress am I wanting to see, and how do I feel like I'm falling short, and what are my expectations? And again, this is an issue that can come back to being self-taught and therefore navigating everything ourselves, because when we do a course or we have a teacher, then we get the expectations of the teacher, who we assume has wider experience than just us, and therefore they can match what we're doing with what's reasonable for us to do, as opposed to us just kind of struggling along, doing what excites us perhaps. And often what excites us is something that's still beyond our level. And again, I think it's always incredibly helpful to relate drawing to a skill such as learning the piano, where I can love incredibly complex music. I can love the Beethoven concerto, but if I'm starting to learn to play the piano, I would never dream of starting with any piece that was like that. I would know that I have to start with simpler pieces. But somehow when people start learning to draw, they feel that they have a chance of drawing well, really very difficult subjects, really very, very difficult subjects. And we kind of set ourselves up to fail when we tackle something that really is beyond us. And if I'm choosing what I do myself, then sometimes I've got to restrain myself, restrain my enthusiasm, because we often draw things. We usually draw things that we love, subjects that we love. I mean, I loved architecture, and I just wanted to draw the Musée du Louvre because it was the most extravagant building I'd seen. But part of me said, that crazy man, leave that for longer, because you'll just feel discouraged. Progress will be earning money with art. Yep, yep. Mind you, I've seen what I think is not particularly good art earning money for the person, because they're as good, if not better, at business and at putting themselves out there than I think they are at art. But let me say, I tremendously respect that, because the problem most artists have is that we're better at our art than we are at the business side, and so we never do very well at the business side because we don't have those. Oh yes, Sagrada Familia. I've got pictures of that I haven't yet drawn, so I understand that. An incredible building. Yeah, top finance coach. Going back to the basics can be a tremendous thing. Really, we shouldn't draw beyond what we can draw well. And again, let's think of a piano player, someone learning the piano. You wouldn't, if you were their teacher, you wouldn't give them a piece that they weren't capable of mastering, that they weren't capable of whatever the demands on their skill were, that they couldn't do. I mean, you'd be a lousy teacher if you did that, if you set your students up to fail. And yet, how often do we become our own lousy teacher by setting ourselves up to fail, by drawing something that perhaps we're more enthused for than we have wisdom for, and realism for? Because if I'm not improving, then there's a couple of problems, but possible problems. But one of them is that I'm just too far along in difficulty for where my skills are at this point. Now, that's and that's really significant. That's a really important thing. As I said, imagine if a kid was learning the piano and you gave them pieces that they weren't capable of tackling, and they just got discouraged. You'd be a bad teacher. Why do we do that to ourselves so much? We need to be realistic. We need to realize that that learning even is a skill, and I've talked about that a lot as well. I just look at a few of these. Currently studying illustration on a different continent than at home. Discouraged from knowing that I could have started so much earlier, but had issues at home. Look. Sometimes life is just like that. And sometimes there are periods where we have to focus on other things, and creativity is a bit of a luxury, where we have larger responsibilities or simply bigger personal issues that we need to deal with. And sometimes, we need to get through those years. We need to clear the decks. The great thing, Merlin, is that you're doing it now. I mean, I didn't start art till I was 50. G'day, Alex. I didn't start art till I was 50. I didn't start drawing till I was 60 or over 60. So, like, I had 40 years where I did almost 30 years where I did almost nothing. But I've worked hard not to let myself go to, oh, what could I have been? Where could I? I'm just really glad that I pulled out of that place. That meant that I really did nothing from school all those years. And it's great that you're doing stuff now, Merlin. But for people who are in the wilderness now, how can we get out so that we don't have lengthy periods? Yeah, the voice in the back of your head saying, "You can't do this." One of my points is about the voice that's in the back of our head, Night Cow. Um, yes, yes. And look, I gotta say, every time I sit down to draw, I still shuffle around and I still put off doing it, um, because there's a certain hesitation. Um, but I've learned to kind of accommodate that now. Uh, Almost 50. That's great, Alex. That's great. And sometimes people can start to be creative later in life, and it's not that they've not been able to do it; they just didn't kind of like weren't interested in doing that earlier, and they've just reached a point in their personal development, and suddenly they think, "I'd like to try that," and that's great. Yeah, look, young people can do amazing things, but yeah, but let's not rule out old people too, who, um, and look, some people just hit the mark more easily, more quickly, and I've said quite a few of my videos that I think because I was a teacher, like I'm a trained high school teacher, and even though I only taught for 3 years in high schools, I did study at university for it for 4 years, and I learnt about learning, and all of that was tremendously helpful for me then when I began to kind of seriously self-teach myself, because I did have a I did have a framework of how do I learn and what's the best way to navigate the options that I have available to me right now. G'day, Ewan. Good to have you back again. Look, Ewan saying he felt like it took too long to realize he wanted art to be his career, or her. Sorry, I don't know who you are. Um, but feeling like running out of time to get good enough. Yeah, look, I mean, maybe you're 95, so maybe you really are running out of time. I don't know. But I mean, some things we can't control, but what we can control is to make the best of now with what we're doing and with staying encouraged. There simply is no point slowing down for things that we can't control, like slowing down things that we can't control. But such as how old we are, but making the best opportunity of right now. Uh, yeah, yeah, and look, I mean, Kimberly, I don't know at what level of development you're at, but I really think expensive equipment is one of the greatly overrated or concerns, because most of the time, how can I put this? The difference in our finished work between using expensive equipment and cheap equipment, I think in drawing more than anything else, is much less than perhaps we think if we're only having to use the cheap equipment. I think with paint and with brushes and things, it can be more significant, an improvement having more expensive equipment. But in drawing, if I'm drawing, I can buy a 4B pencil from the stationers, and copy paper, is kind of okay for pencil and or for pen, and for now, you can really go a long way still with that. Like, as I said, I don't know that the difference in drawing, and it certainly is not going to hold you back from improving. Yes, Grandma Moses, good on it. Okay, yeah. I mean, I know nothing about digital drawing, Benji, but thank you for that contribution. And yeah, you don't have that problem with equipment at all, with paints that cost $80 a tube and crazy things like that. That if we paint in oils, we have to make choices about. Um, um, the last question too, though, if we feel we're not improving, just going back to that question, the last thing I've noted there is that, is it true that I'm not improving? And this is where it can be good to go back to an earlier artwork that I've done that is somehow comparable in what it's done with and what it is with what I'm doing now. Because sometimes we do improve, but it's little by little, and we don't realize how much we've improved because we haven't felt it and maybe we haven't seen it in a big way in any one drawing. But if we go back 30 drawings, we can actually see, well, gosh, I look at this and I feel a bit, oh gosh, did I do that? This isn't right. That's not right. And when we can start to see more things not right in our earlier drawings, we realize that we've, in our mind, in our skill development, we've started to see those things more easily and take them for granted, and therefore we don't think of them as hard or difficult, and we don't see the achievement in actually doing them now. Um, Look, you're in your 20s. It's great. It's great to be motivated, great to be committed, great to be really wanting to improve, because you're perfectly positioned for a great life of creativity if that's the path you want to keep going on. So, but learning how to deal with the stresses and the discouragements that we have is even more important when you're young, because you've got more time to benefit from them. There's more. A larger impact it can have on your creative output. So I think that's great. Or it's possible that that as time goes on in our working, we feel discouraged with our artwork, but it's actually because we're discovering more about the potential of our artwork, the potential of medium and of our subjects, and we're discovering more and more artists and seeing what they're doing, and that's one of the problems of the internet. I mean, you can find someone who's the best in the world almost at almost anything if you want, and that can be great for just seeing great drawings and things. But if I'm trying to draw myself, if I'm trying to learn, if I'm trying to stay motivated with it all, and all the time when I Google things and I'm looking at pictures of drawings, they're phenomenally amazing and breathtaking and world class standard. It can actually be discouraging. I can feel like I'm never going to get to there. And of course, that's like me, jumping into the pool next to an Australian Olympic swimmer and getting discouraged because they get to the other end so much quickly. Yes, but they've spent 10 years being at the pool at 5 a.m. and swimming for 3 hours before they go to school, and then coming back to the pool and swimming for another 4 hours before they go home for dinner every day, and more on the weekend, for years and years and years and years. And they've changed their whole life geared towards excelling in that. And I shouldn't be measuring where I'm going and how good I am with how far ahead of me they get to the other end of the pool. And I mean, one of the first meme I ever saw on the internet that made sense to me was comparison is the thief of joy. And I think it's very true. We want to be inspired by other people, but we don't want to compare ourselves to them in a way that leads to discouragement, in a way that makes me think, I can't do that, because we don't know the price they've paid to be in that place. We don't know how much time they have or haven't put into what they're doing. Um, and and we don't even know often how, if it's a single picture, how representative that is of what generally they're able to do. So, it's really important, I think, to be really careful with looking at what other people are doing. And we don't know, they might have had very intense input from a very gifted artist and teacher as well that I haven't had, you haven't had. So we do need to be careful, but as we develop our interest in our art and our craft, we can see things that we haven't seen, and so our expectations rise, and then we get discouraged because we haven't kept up, and we need to make sure we're reasonable with what we put on ourselves. It's and I think possibly when we start anything, it's easier to think that it's going to be easier than it actually is, but maybe particularly drawing, because it feels so easy because we've been doing it since we were kids. Every kid picks up a pencil and paper and does some drawing, and um, um, and but that's not what we're trying to do now. And so, it's yeah. I had a friend who, when he was at uni, he one semester he took a Polish course. He thought it'd be fun to learn Polish, and I thought, oh yeah, good luck to you. And he dropped it about 3 weeks later because what he learnt was it was no fun. It was a lot of hard work, and it wasn't hard work that he wanted to do. He thought it'd be fun to walk around and say Polish sentences that no one knew to everyone. And he had this mental picture of him being able to do that from this introductory course. But what actually he discovered was you can't learn this without a great deal of effort and practice and concentration. And he was nowhere near prepared to put that in. And what he wanted it for wasn't worth that effort. And well, he just dropped it. But yeah, we can unwittingly have the same thoughts about drawing that, oh, it'd be really cool to be able to draw well, and I can draw all the things I love to look at and all of that, and not realize how this is a skill to develop and to go beyond a kind of hobby, crafty, fun, cartoony, kind of casual drawing and start to develop and craft skills and techniques that consistently lead to a certain place, a certain sort of visual effect in what we're producing. That takes work and practice, and it's like practicing the piano every morning. There's consistency that we need to do and a focus we need to have. Yeah. And I think there is a hit the wall point for every activity, that's related to, look, I'll say natural talent, but I don't want to get into what's talent in the artistic talent sense and what's something different, because I think what is talent? I'm not even sure that's a helpful question. But with everything, there is a point in anything we can do with just general natural ability. And I used to see this with my kids. And I saw it when I was a teacher, but I also saw it with my kids when they were at school. For each of them, there was a place they could go in their studies, a level they could get to simply from their natural abilities without having to make any great effort. And, they were different kids. So that point was different for each of them. But each of them hit that point at some point in their high school level where they couldn't just drift on because they were capable up to that point without any effort. And they would all hit that point. And then they actually had to put the effort in if they were to progress. And I think the general principle is the further you can go without any effort, the harder it is when you hit that point to go further, because you've not developed the skills of pushing yourself to go further. It's just been easy. But none of us keep going forever on that trajectory. We all hit that point. We all hit the wall, and we don't go any further unless we now develop skills in a way that we haven't had to. So I think that certainly is the case with drawing as well. So some people can get further more easily, more quickly. You're 28 minutes in. Yeah, welcome. I've barely started my notes, but that's probably no surprise to anyone. That's great, Will, that you're joining us for the first time. Glad you can. This was meant to be last night, but I actually wasn't well, so I had to go to bed early. So yeah, so sorry if that threw anyone a bit. But yeah, so we all have that hit the wall point, and it can feel like when I hit the wall that suddenly, I can't do this. And no, it's just that I haven't learned how to learn to do this, and now I need to. And yeah. There are some ads about to come on for some of you, so please let them run. I think they just come down the bottom. I don't think they're going to stop you listening to me. So there's the hit the wall points. And there is the discouragement that can come when life gets very busy in other ways. And so I feel like I don't have time, and I start to feel guilty that I'm spending time on drawing when I should be mowing the lawn or building a new garden or I don't know, repairing the kids' clothes or study, doing something for work that has a more direct income or whatever. Um, Look, I think also part of it, and this is possibly a larger area than I'm going to talk about, but another large area of discouragement comes because we've never actually been sure of what we're wanting to achieve, what we're trying to achieve in in our drawing, like where we're going with it, like what's the point, what's the purpose of it? Because a lot of the for me personally, a lot of the drive in doing something is because I have a clear picture of where it's going to look, how I want it to be at the end. And that can often give me strength when my back starts to hurt or I'm tired or, I'm not sure what to do to thanks, Will. Um, to push through because I've got this picture of how it's going to be at the end, whether it's landscaping or a project in the house or a job or a course I'm doing. But with drawing, we can kind of start doing drawing because it is very accessible. It doesn't need a lot of expensive equipment, and we can enjoy it and keep going with it. And then we can find ourselves on a journey that's become a nice part of our life without ever actually saying, why am I doing this? Where am I wanting it to go to? And therefore, when things become a bit difficult, suddenly our time is stretched, or we feel like I'm not improving the way I was, or this is really hard, or someone says something unkind about something we've done. We get discouraged. We don't know where to go. Like, I mean, um, like why are you drawing right now? Is it simply to have fun because you enjoy the process? That's great. Well, you shouldn't ever get discouraged because you can always draw and therefore you can always have fun. But as soon as I'm wanting to have a sense of I want to improve, then there's a pressure on me, and I can get discouraged if I don't feel I'm improving. But why am I wanting to improve? Simply because I like to feel that I'm excelling in what I do. And that can be a strong reason. Or am I wanting to improve because I'm hoping to have an Etsy shop or something like that and sell some stuff, sell some things that can go on t-shirts and cards and posters and things? Or am I wanting to improve because I want to be an artist who exhibits paintings or artworks in shows? I want to be an exhibiting artist in some way, and then all the way down to the end of the line where I want to actually make a respectable income that I can live off from my art. I would like this to be what I do all the time. Or I may know that's something I definitely don't want to do, that I always want to have another source of income, and my art, my drawing is not to pay the bills, but it's always going to be in that pleasurable kind of having a good time without the pressure point. But knowing what I'm trying to achieve is, I think, important, because if I don't hold it clearly in my head, then when things get difficult, it's very hard to work out why or how to push through that. I need to know where I'm trying to get to so that I can navigate a more direct path to that place. Thanks, thanks, Will. That's very kind of you. Can I just tell you that I am only 304 subscribers away from 100,000 subscribers. So that's a little exciting for me. So I'm hoping that by this time tomorrow night, um, I'll have my well, I've qualified anyway for my silver play button, which is something in my wildest dreams I would never have thought. So yeah, if you know 304 people who might like to follow my channel who don't, can you do me a favor in the next 24 hours and let them know? Well, the congratulations are a little bit premature, as I said. Thanks, top finance coach. But yeah, 304 to go. So it has kind of been, I mean, for me, that's been tremendously encouraging, because that's if you like, a goalpost in my drawing development that I never dreamed of. Like, I didn't even know that was a thing you could go for. So sometimes we can get unexpected encouragement and motivation in what we're doing. But yeah, so trying to work out where I'm going to go and where I want to get to um, um, is um, is a helpful way of not getting discouraged, because I can have a clearer focus with everything. Look, sometimes we can get discouraged too, and really, all we need, or what we need. Thanks, Jessica. What we need is people, real life people, face to face people, that we can work with, that we can encourage each other with. Isolation can be a very discouraging thing, because we can get um, um, my Shina. I've got you. Oh, you is that that's a is you Shina person? Look, Alex, I don't know quite what you mean by I always aspire to get to their skill level. But they got to their skill level, firstly being a different person to begin with than you are, and secondly by and secondly by doing all these things that you don't know what they did and how they did them, in the order in which they did them, and what price they paid in either money or in blood, sweat, and tears to get there. Right. Yep. That all makes sense now. So, but I I think the best thing, Alex, is not to be really focused on being producing art like theirs, but producing the best art you can produce. And we certainly can be inspired by the techniques and the genres and the kind of the look of what other artists do. And I think it is a very valid and good thing to do that. But I mean, every time people say to me, "Oh, I'd love to be as good as you," I say, I hope you end up better than me, doing things that I've never done." Because firstly, I think that's what a teacher wants to do. Um, and I have discovered from YouTube that I'm still as much a teacher as I am an artist. But because you can do things I can't do, just as I can do things you can't do. And I think we sell ourselves short and what's in us when we limit ourselves to try and approach what someone else has done. And then we end up getting this focus on what they've done instead of what we can do. Does that make sense? Yeah, well, yeah. Not finishing any pieces, I think, is a big problem. And because, as I've said in a recent video, there are things we only learn in the final stages of a painting or drawing, artwork, whatever. And they're really important things. The things that we learn when we kind of do the fine tuning, we make the adjustments, and probably the options there partly depending. If it's digital, it's a bit different to if I'm drawing freehand in ink, where I can't take anything away, but I can add things to shift balance and things, if I choose to. And you only learn them in the final stages, because you don't get to do them or even see them in the first stages. So thanks. um, yeah. Oh gosh, I totally run away from my notes. But and I think a lot of the things that are being commented on here on the chat are things that do kind of relate to, or can be related to, um, just issues with the learning process, and not not pacing ourselves in a realistic way, having unrealistic expectations, and therefore having lurching from here to there. Um, Often people who want to do anything creative want to do everything creative, and I start to draw with pencil. I see ink. I think that looks great. I'll give that a go. I see someone use pastels, and I say, "Oh, I've got to buy some pastels." And then I discover oil pastels, so I buy some of those. And then I see someone watercoloring, so I buy watercolors. And then I see wonderful charcoal drawings, and so I buy some charcoal, and I dabble in everything. And that's like trying to learn 12 languages at once. For most people, it's going to actually stop you learning any of them well. So, we learn more by learning less things really well, particularly at the start, because that's when we're learning how to learn this subject, this genre. So, um, um, and so yeah, we uh, a lot of people wouldn't go to teach themselves the piano. And if they did, they would probably be trying to research how to learn the piano rather than just grabbing sheets of music of their favorite songs and trying to play them. But when we draw, there is this feeling that I'll just draw, and that somehow just doing that is the way to learn. When we wouldn't approach learning any other discipline in that same kind of ad hoc way. Just Yeah, Nicola, if if we go deep in one area, whether it's pencil or watercolor, we learn how to, or in my case, oil paints, we learn how to go deep, and we learn skills about going deep that we then can take into other media. But if I go shallow in 100 things, all I learn to do is to go shallow in lots of things. And so, um, um, yeah, look, Will, I would say draw in pencil if you want to draw in pencil. If you want to draw in pen, don't draw in pencil. Like, graphite and ink are two totally different media, and they have different strengths, different weaknesses. They handle differently. They respond to different paper and have different issues, and you can produce very different effects with them. Pencil is not like a junior learner's method for drawing with pen, simply because you can erase it. If I want to learn to draw freehand in ink, then I should just be drawing freehand in ink. I shouldn't be doing pencil under drawing unless that's the technique I want to always use. But it's not like it will um, naturally lead in. I'm still going to have to bite the bullet and start to draw in ink. I might as well do that from the word go, and just draw directly in ink and learn how to do that if that's the skill I want. But again, I start that with simpler subjects. I don't start drawing the Musée du Louvre directly in ink. I start with the Yorkshire cottage, simple stone cottage. I start with a tree perhaps, where it doesn't have to look exactly the same to still sort of look okay. Um, so if I misunderstood what you're saying with the pencil and the learner's permit, but yeah, uh, pencil is not like a halfway house on the way to drawing with pen. Start with what you want to finish off being able to use. Yeah, and so if I'm self-taught, lack of guidance can have me wandering down dead ends, and I might start copying the work of other artists, because I can produce a nicer looking drawing more easily. But unless that's the skill I want to learn, copying, it's not going to help me. It won't help me draw my own original drawings. If that's what I want to do, then that's what I need to do, and push through, learn the hard work of seeing a reference and doing the creative thinking that tells me where to put the lines on the paper, and the marks and what marks to make. None of which I learn if I'm just copying the marks that someone else has already put on the paper. So that's important. I mean, you know, always be doing what you want to learn, but start in an easy, gentle way, because we've talked about how discouraging um, discouragement becomes, and equally encouragement is very encouraging. And so doing things that we can do well is really helpful, really motivating for us, and where I can look at something and think, wow. I mean, I hope you all know that feeling where you've done something and you thought, wow, I didn't think it was going to turn out this well. And again, I have so many drawings that halfway through I thought, oh, this is rubbish, but I may as well continue it because I've got the camera on, and maybe, and like I get to the end and I think, wow, I'm really happy with how it looks now. And um, um, that's been a tremendous thing I've learned, that works look a lot better at the end than halfway through. Um, yeah, hey, welcome, Raymond. Yeah, be careful who you listen to, um, because not everyone is going to be equally helpful, or not equally helpful for you and where you're at. You think, wow, until you look at the next day. Yeah, look, I do know that next day feeling, Nicola, where you can often see things not quite right with it the next day because you've had time to, when we're drawing it, when we're painting it, we get used to our errors because they appear bit by bit and we don't quite see the disconnect that might be in our work. And we go away, we sleep on it, we come back and we're looking at it almost like we're looking at someone else's work, and we can see things. And that's a tremendously important time. Whenever we come back after a period of not seeing a recent work and we look at it, we should be looking for the things that don't look quite right, not to be discouraged, but because they give us focus for where we can improve. And they very specifically give us direction of how we can amend our technique. So that's the first time you see something the next day after you've just done it is a really, like, it's a valuable time. So use it with a lot of focus. Look at it and think, okay, my immediate reaction, what's happening? Am I thinking it's too dull? The colors are all too dull. Am I thinking this part doesn't look right? That perspective doesn't look right. These eyes look like they're little bit cross-eyed. The head's not wide enough or high enough or whatever. What's happening? Look, I mean, like, sometimes I get taken to task about what I say about copying, because copying the work of the past masters was always a part of a traditional learning to paint, that they would go to museums, the art students, and they would copy the work of the great artist of 100 years, 200, 300 years before. And there is a certain place in a formal art course where you're developing skills in a fairly structured and supervised way where that can be helpful. But I'm not talking about that. I'm talking about what I see on Instagram, where I see a lot of people who are clearly self-taught and clearly doing their own drawings, simply, I mean, choosing what they do themselves, copying the drawings of other artists, including myself, because it's a quicker, easier way to get a good-looking drawing, to get a drawing that looks good, because they haven't had to have the creative skills of thinking and working out how to represent my reference or what's in front of me in marks on the paper. And that's, I think, and the careful observation is all tied up in that. And that's 90% of the effort. The actual drawing skills, in my mind, is like the 10% of importance. And it's the learning to see really clearly and accurately what we want to draw, and then working out how I will translate that into marks and put those marks, connect them on the paper, and how many to do where, and create the effect that I'm seeing. That's the really challenging part. And when I copy someone else who's done that, I don't learn how to do that. And so I can, someone can copy my drawings and end up becoming really good at copying and end up actually developing those skills and faithfully reproducing my drawings and never be able to draw their own drawing, because they've not learned how to think in some sort of similar way to how I think, because that's where those marks come from. And yeah, and in fact, I've had people tell me that they're discouraged because they do good drawings when they copy other people's work, but their own work is nowhere near as good, and that makes them feel that they can't draw, that other people can draw and they can't. And it's not a problem with their skill or with their ability. It's a misunderstanding of the learning process and what they're learning. So, I always try and sort of point them in the wrong direction. Yeah, the ugly stage. Yeah. I think I had a few years in my life where I was at the ugly stage. Keep going with our artworks till we're in love with them. Yeah, that's good. Oh, before I forget, someone asked me, could I show some of my paintings when I do live streaming? So this is actually the last painting I've done. It's a waratah, which is our state flower, and they're amazing. They look like it's Christmas when they're in the bush, and they've got these glossy green leaves, and they're these wonderful kind of crimsons to scarlets, even to oranges at times, and they're almost like a sculpture. They're a very like thick, yeah, wonderful flower, and they look great in the bush when it's just green and red. Yeah, and yeah, so that's the state flower of New South Wales. But that was, I don't know what, 3 years ago I painted that. Haven't touched the oil paint since then, but I'm thinking that I wouldn't mind. Okay, so I have another New South Wales and Welshman. School can't keep up with my idea. Look, that's a great problem to have. That's a better problem than not having ideas, because in some ways we want our vision of what's possible to keep dragging us to new places. I think it's a great problem to have, Jaeger. Keep having the ideas, and but yeah, there is some realism that needs to happen with that. But okay, look, I think one of the biggest challenges we get is with the whole YouTube thing, is that we can spend a lot of time watching videos that aren't helping us. So that's a problem. But we can also watch videos that give us bad advice. It possibly wouldn't be bad advice for someone else doing other things a different way, but for us, it's going to be clashing with perhaps where we've come and how we're thinking and kind of the journey we're on. Or it may simply not be geared to take us where we want to go. Yeah. Well, that's great. And it's hard for me to sort of really give advice, except to say, feel empowered to judge the videos that you watch, and not to presume that if someone's made a YouTube video, they must know more than me because I'm watching them. Like, I know for some of you that's not going to be a problem. G'day, Amy. But I think for many people, it's kind of a case of thinking, oh well, look, if they're the teacher and they've got the videos and they've got the channel, then what they say must be good, and it must be helpful, and it must be quality. And if it doesn't make sense or I can't understand it, then that must be my fault. And that's not necessarily true, because in anything, in any field, especially a field that people can just volunteer to do, and there is no bar in terms of who can put a teaching video on anything on YouTube, whether it's how to change a fly screen or taking your fridge door on and off, or how to draw or how to paint or how to arrange flowers. Anyone who wants to make a video can. And it may be very helpful advice, it may be nonsense. And it's really up to us to decide whether it's helpful for me. And I think I just want to say, be empowered when you watch a video and you're thinking, this just don't let it end up making you feel there's something wrong with you, because there's every chance that it's just one of the videos that isn't particularly helpful. It's been designed for views, or sometimes, I mean, where people have courses they're trying to funnel you into, they only give part of it because they want you to pay money and sign up. And look, I got nothing against that. Like why shouldn't people make money from their work? But if it's not clear that they haven't told you everything, I can be left thinking I don't fully understand it because I'm not clever enough. When the answer is they actually haven't told me everything yet, and I need to pay and do the course if I want to kind of understand it all fully. And so these are the things that we need to I think about and be aware, because people do make videos for all sorts of reasons. And like if you watch videos on how to make YouTube videos and what videos will get lots of views. I mean, let's face it, if people make YouTube videos and they want views, because if you don't want people to see them, why would you make them? And there's lots of videos on how to make them, but they end up being very formulaic and not necessarily. Often they end up being more for entertainment because that's maybe a more predictable way to get views than for learning, which isn't always as razzmatazz. But if what you want to do is to learn, then an entertaining video may actually not have much content. It may have lots of entertainment, but you could spend a lot of time being entertained when you're really wanting to be learning. And I think that's sort of one of the things I'm talking about. We can put time into watching things that, even if we enjoy the process of watching, what I really wanted to do was to be better at drawing or painting or changing fly screens at the end of it, and I'm not. And that can be frustrating and discouraging. And again, if I don't understand the dynamic of the video I'm watching, if I don't understand the learning process, perhaps particularly clearly, then I can just end up thinking there's something wrong with me and everybody else watches these things and they improve and I can't. And in fact, I'm not really watching what they're watching because they've perhaps got better filters for detecting or reducing to what videos are going to be helpful for them. Yes. For architecture. Yeah, well, that's great. I'm just reading some of these. Yeah. Yeah. So, yes, and it can be helpful to think back to school. I mean, not every teacher was helpful in high school, were they? And we had favorite teachers, and some of them were fun, but we didn't learn much. And the kids in another class actually did better, but maybe didn't have as much fun as we had. So, there are all these issues to all these issues that we have to navigate when we're watching YouTube videos, and it's easy to feel that they're the expert and that I'm not. So, as I said, be empowered to decide that if I'm not learning, then this is not a good video for me. This is possibly not a good teacher for me. This is not a good process. Or I'm being told some more ads are going to come up for some of you. So please watch them. How many years I draw? I've only really been drawing since 2018. But I painted for 10 years before that, and I think for half that time I painted full time. So I was able to work as a full-time artist, painting oil paints, but not the things I draw. I actually painted trees, and I painted Australian wildflowers and things, um, and loved it. But I started drawing on a trip to Paris with my daughter. I mean, I've done a few little bits and pieces, like just odd things over the years, sort of doodle things that developed, but like, you know, something this year, and then like 6-7 years later, I might have picked up pen and paper in an idle moment and done something else. But it was, I only in my mind started to draw in 2018, and just loved it. And I found that a lot of this, I talked about going deep. I'd gone deep in painting in oils, and I found that so many of the skills that I learned in doing that, I think, were very readily available to me then with the drawing. And I began with pencil, just doing location sketching. When I came home and I was using photos, I would just do a 4x4 grid on the photo. And as they it was actually a 4 square grid at first, but then as the scenes I drew became more complex, it became a 3x3 grid, or 3x4, depending on the format. What was I saying? I think I was saying how I changed and developed what I was doing with the drawing. Yeah, and I started pencil, then I switched to ink, and then when I began YouTube, I decided I was getting ready for a trip to Europe that finished up being cancelled because of COVID, but I wanted to do street sketching in pen, and so I began to draw freehand in pen. And the same sort of scenes, the urban sketching, the architecture, the streets, and I love that. But then I got to say, with YouTube, it kind of pushed me to go into other areas. People were saying, "Oh, could you do this? Could you do that?" And in terms of drawing scenes, I was still enjoying drawing architecture, but I began to like draw trees and draw textures and things. And I really found that really quite stimulating, and really helped motivate me in fresh ways for my drawing. So sometimes we need to kind of shift and develop what we do. How easy a project is a 5-minute landscape? Well, it depends how depends on the landscape. It depends how much you're expected to do in 5 minutes. 5 minutes is not very long to do anything. I've done a couple of videos that have like a 5-minute challenge, and like, wow, 5 minutes, you've got to do a lot. I mean, when I do a 5-minute time drawing, I don't know if it's cheating, but I do all my observation before the 5 minutes starts, so that when the clock starts, I'm ready to hit the pencil on the paper and go for it. And it depends how large it is too. I mean, if the drawing is going to be this big, or if it's going to be this big, makes a big difference. Just the physical time it takes to get that. And again, with a landscape, like, depending on the landscape, it could be quite simple, especially if it's a big view from far away. It could just be a line for the horizon ridge, and it could be a small house far away. Why I started drawing, because I was in Paris and I wanted to capture Paris somehow more. And I was with my children, and I asked one of them, did she want to sit and draw with me? And she did, and I thought that would be lovely. And an excuse to sit in front of Notre Dame in a lovely Paris twilight, I didn't think needed, and I just loved it. But quite honestly, I probably continued it only because of the encouragement I got from Instagram when I posted my drawings on the account where I was posting my paintings. And I went from, I don't know, I was lucky to get 30 likes on a painting, and suddenly I was getting thousands of likes on my drawings. And that kind of pushed me a bit too, but it also encouraged me. And that's right, I was talking about the point of we can end up being discouraged because in isolation, it can be a very solitary drawing. So try and find a tribe of people. Now, possibly online, there are opportunities for that. And in some ways, this is a tribe and we're a tribe. And the names that appear consistently on chats and things, we haven't met each other, but you start to get a feel for people and their journey and what they're doing, and that's nice. But it is nice to have some face to face. So, I would always suggest, particularly if someone's feeling discouraged about, hey Smitha, welcome. Particularly if feeling discouraged about drawing, is to find some people you can draw with. And look, most look, I can't say that, it may not be true, but there are lots of drawing groups, art groups, local community groups of people who get together to be creative, often with very little or no cost. And if there's nothing happening in your local area, just put an ad in the local paper or some notes up in local shopping centres saying, you know, local artists, wondering if anyone else wants to get together and just draw together in the streets, draw the things in our village or town or city or whatever. I mean, because you're not going to be the only person, and it can be really encouraging to I mean, our own individual drawings are our own, but it's great to have that engagement with others. And it's also really important because we can often see issues in each other's drawings in ways we can't see them in ourselves. And so someone else seeing my drawing with fresh eyes can say, yeah, that's sort of okay, but what about this? And we think, oh, okay. And so we actually have a great value with each other. And if we're all sort of drawing together, then we know we're trying to encourage each other and no one's pointing at mistakes to score points, because we want each other to improve. And I think that's really helpful. Oh, I see, Nicola. Yeah. Well, yeah. There is a confidence that comes doing things quickly because we've developed a skill over a certain time. And while I haven't been drawing for that many years, really, it's 5 years, it has been intensive drawing, far more intensive than most people would have the chance to do, with other commitments in their life. So yeah. And yeah, sorry. So I'm probably guilty of that too. How do you soldier on when you've been actively discouraged? Look, probably the worst I mean, I don't know. The worst I get is my wife kind of going, don't know if I like that one very much. But I know that's usually more to do with the subject than with the actual, if you like, caliber of the drawing. So, and like in terms of the online world, I've just found people relentlessly encouraging and positive. But firstly, generally in life, in terms of responding to criticisms, is who is the person criticizing me? Like, does their opinion matter to me? Do I feel like their ability to understand, to observe, to discern is actually putting them in a place where they can see things that are worth criticizing in a valid way and to put it in a valid, helpful way? Or are they just people who find it easy to say unpleasant things to other people and would rather pull someone down than encourage them? Because there are people like that. And if there's someone whose opinion I wouldn't normally care about, say their opinion about politics or I don't know, why am I going to care about their opinion with my drawing? And equally, if I feel that they just have a critical spirit and they just find it easier to have a go at people, maybe they're not happy people and they don't like themselves, and so they don't like anything about anyone else either, and they're just having a go at me. Well, like, why listen to that? Or why let it affect me? Because it's not about me, it's about them. It's about them not being happy with themselves, and so they have to put that on other people as well. And if someone, why not say, if someone is being critical of our work, say, what is it that you don't like? Because why not use it as an opportunity to possibly improve, regardless of what their motive is? Because if there is something they can see that I'm not seeing, then they're doing me a favor if they point it out, and perhaps they're doing it harshly and with bad blood, but that still doesn't stop me from benefiting from it. So yeah, yeah. Well, see, Jaeger, I reckon we all need to get rid of our erasers. I reckon they so rarely help us, and they so often hold us back. Yeah, Jessica, I find myself the worst critic. And for some people, that's true. And for some other people, they need to learn to be their own critic at all. Um, um, yeah, and often it's just to do with other more general ways I see myself and I see the world. But yeah, and that's why it's hard to say something that too pontifical about this, because yeah, some people need to stop thinking everything they do is amazing, and start to look more critically in a helpful way, but start to see the things that they're just mistakes that they're repeating over and over again, and therefore getting better at repeating mistakes. Whereas other people need to have pointed out the amazing things they're doing and the amazing distance they've come, and to stop seeing the things that they haven't mastered yet, and see the things that they've really improved on. And I mean, a good teacher can do this, but unfortunately, when we're self-taught, well, we only have ourselves to give that. We don't have a teacher personally or other classmates. So yeah. Sometimes we can get discouraged because we feel like it's just the wrong time in my life, that any time's a better time than now. We can think I'm too young. And when I was younger, I probably thought, oh, I'm too young to. I had this, I don't know, this unhelpful idea, that an unrealistic idea, that somehow things were easier when you were older, as if there was some way your mind changed when you got older and became an adult. Um, um, or we can feel equally that we get to then the point at the other end of our life where I think I'm too old, it's too late. And there can be a lot of regret mixed in with that, of decades of doing nothing. And of course, none of that's true. Or it could be in those in between years, and I think I'm too busy, and that may be true. But maybe if I reduce my expectations of what I'm trying to do, if I just do some drawing for fun once a month, then that's I'll learn a huge amount over years doing that. So I think we need to be careful of sort of big category excuses for not for fear that, oh, it's no good to do it now. I'm not old enough, or I've left my run too late, or I've got too many other things on. And I don't know. Will, have you seen my playlist on perspective? I've got a 10 video perspective playlist, which actually now I think has 12 videos in it. I squeezed 2 more onto it, where although they're not designed to follow each other, I basically grabbed one video that kind of focused on a different area, and sort of starting with just a general, what's the concept of perspective, and then one that starts with one that's to do with eye level and how to find it, And like, you have you? Okay. Well, look, maybe have another look, or look at some of the ones that I didn't put on the playlist that sound like they could be helpful. Um, uh, Thanks, Benita. That's very kind of you to say. Um, just passed a certificate and awaiting the start of a diploma, and know that. Oh well, thank you. That my words and techniques have helped me. Look, thank you. Yes, yes. My aim is to make everything look and sound and feel easy, because that's what a good teacher does. A good teacher will help you to feel that you can do it, rather than try and make it look complicated so they look clever, and try and use big words so that they look clever. Um, that's not good teaching. So I love it when people make what do sound simple. That yeah, no, hang on, no. When people say what I do seems simple, because that means I've done my job, the job I'm trying to do well. So I love hearing that. Um, Sometimes I get discouraged, and it's really that I've run out of ideas and I'm in a rut. And that's right. I was talking before about how my drawing has progressed from this to that to, I've changed the medium I use, and I've changed the subjects, and I've sort of changed the way I draw too. I've become a lot more gestural of late, and I've really enjoyed exploring more gestural marks directly with the pen, and just building confidence to do that, and confidence that when I do wrong lines, I'll be able to work it out most of the time. And that's a good skill to learn, and to develop the confidence that you realize that every line doesn't have to be perfect for the drawing to look okay at the end. Um, and and so if I'm feeling discouraged about what I'm doing, maybe it's time to change something. Um, Change the medium, change the things I draw, change the scale I draw at. Sometimes drawing larger or smaller can really loosen me up, or it can make things more straightforward, and I can perhaps do them to a higher quality. Um, so yeah, remind you of Scott. I don't know who Scott is. Jaeger, I'm afraid. Like using any watercolor and both issues. Look. One of the reasons, actually, Jessica, that I began to draw with ink, when I thought I was getting ready for a wonderful 3 months in Europe in 2020, um, was that I also wanted to use watercolor. And I thought that pen would work better with that. The graphite would smudge with the watercolor and would kind of make it look dirty. And I must have at the time just seen some really nice pen and watercolor um, street sketches, and thought I'd love to learn to do that. So I actually began to draw freehand in pen, because it was part of learning to then put watercolor onto it. And the unexpected thing was that I enjoyed that learning to draw directly with pen so much that I kind of have never got to the watercolor, because I still feel like I'm enjoying fun with the pen and learning things with the pen. But I'm starting to kind of think, I really do need to get set up and put some time into learning watercolor. But there's like, it's just, yeah, I mean, making a video about a drawing takes a lot more time than just the drawing. So yeah, there is partly a time thing. Um, Yeah, look, thanks, Nicola, and Will, and I talk about seeing the patterns of perspective, and I actually I actually made a video on that. It certainly comes up in lots of videos, but I I understand perspective most of the time in terms of I look for the patterns that it forms, and the most important pattern is the fan pattern, that you have eye level, and then every horizontal line above that increases in value in angle, and every one below that, if there are them below that, increases the other direction. And so you've got this pattern. So you never have horizontal lines at an angle parallel to each other. the further away from eye level they go, the angle tilts more, whichever direction that is. And so, yeah, that's um, uh, is also an elderly artist in YouTube. That's great. I will tell my wife that. There's another elderly artist on YouTube, darling. Yes, Scott Christian. Um, yeah. There's a so yeah. I look for those, but I think working out where eye level is always really important, because that's where the fan lines join. And look, most of the time I find in practice those lines don't join actually on your paper, or maybe one does for one building, but they don't all. And there can be lots and lots and lots of points where they join. Um, yeah, but so I just got yeah, thanks. That's good to hear. Actually, Lance, the pressure to produce a work of artistry. But yeah, look, yes, I do have thoughts on that. And this is a focus in a lot of my more recent videos. It's interesting when I look at the videos where I kind of talk more philosophy of drawing, or rather than actually doing a demo. One of the things I've become more and more feel more and more strongly about is the extremely unhelpful thought of, when I start to draw, I'm going to end up with an artwork at the end, because it's simply not true, any more than someone learning the piano would be thinking that at the end of that session of learning to draw, learning to play the piano, they would give a concert performance to an audience. And yet we feel like when we start to draw, that if at the end of it we don't have something worth putting in a frame, that we're wasting our time. Like, no, when I start to learn to draw, I'm not producing artworks. I'm learning to draw. In the same way, someone learning to play the piano is not thinking that they're a they're a concert pianist for years and years and years, maybe decades, maybe decades. And yet somehow with drawing, we have this feeling that if I have any talent, I'll be able to sit down and draw, and then it's going to be worth framing. And the problem, Lance, as I'm sure you know, with that mindset, is that I spend my drawing time terrified of making mistakes, because that will spoil my artwork. And when I can't take risks, I can't learn to draw, because I have to put lines in the wrong places to learn how to put them in the right places. And sometimes I do that on the actual paper, and sometimes I do a wrong line and think, oh, that line's not quite right. So I put the right line in, and yeah. And it was easier to put the right line in because I had the wrong line to guide me. But it is, I mean, it is so important that I don't think of producing an artwork, but I think of, I'm learning to draw. And that's not to say that sometimes things I draw won't be artworks and won't be worthy of being framed. Yes, Shadow, you're an hour and 23 minutes in. It's goodness, it's 20 past 10 here in Sydney. I'll be in trouble. PM. Yes, it's incredibly unhelpful, because it makes us more concerned about not making mistakes than about learning to have confidence and freedom, and learning how to place the lines in the right places. Like, no one learns the piano without wrong notes. No one learns to sing without hitting wrong notes. And yet somehow we think that if we have any talent, that it's worthwhile, that that we'll be able to draw without making mistakes. Yeah, learning to take risks, and like taking sensible risks. And look, it's part of not aiming too high too quickly. And again, um, it's important not going too high too quickly, but um, learning to be aiming to do something that, like, a good teacher will always set material that will always set material that the student has a chance of succeeding in, because there is no chance, there is no point in setting material that the students can't achieve, can't do well in. That's only discouraging. So, but unfortunately, we can, as self-taught artists, we can set ourselves targets that we have no chance with our skill level of achieving, and then we do end up discouraged. Um, uh, yes, it's funny, hello Ukraine. It's funny because people often sort of think, oh, well, they do watercolor and they think, oh, that's going to be easier than oil. But, like with an oil painting, you can paint the whole thing 5 times and no one knows that you've painted it 5 times because it covers. But with watercolor, was it Lance who said, it is so unforgiving that I feel quite intimidated about. And to paint watercolor well, you need to have a certain amount of surrender to the water. Like, you need to kind of let it go and trust that you can also flow with how it flows, and pull some control, put some control back into the chaos. 720 in Peru. No, it was Merlin who said that, not Lance. Yeah, look, I think the piano is a great comparison. 120 in the UK. That's great. It's just crazy. We are all around the world, and here we are all in this moment together. It still blows my mind every time. Like, it's just great. It's just amazing. I love it. Absolutely love it. Look, Kestrel, I think it can be. I think it's probably always worth starting, because we can't always trust our motives in thinking it's not a good time. See, sometimes that's fear speaking and trying to disguise itself as something else so that we don't feel like we respond to our fear, or we don't even have to admit that we are afraid in some way of starting to draw. But is, and look, so often I mean, I just know, just with these YouTube videos. I mean, I'm doing YouTube videos fairly frequently. I haven't done any for a couple of days, which is the most I haven't done any videos for ages. And we've had some busy family things happening, and I haven't been 100%. So, so what was I saying about that? You can tell it's 10:24 p.m. here. Sorry, I also drawing woman. Yeah. So, because I want to make the video, often I do a drawing only because I'm wanting to make the video, not because I want to do the drawing. And every time, once I start the drawing, I just get into the drawing. But I know that I wouldn't have felt I was in the mood, and I was only doing it to get a video done. And yet once I start, it's like I'm in that world, I'm in that space, and it's just great. And I look at it at the end and I think, wow, I'm so glad I did this. It's nice to have produced this. So, I mean, like, look, it partly depends. If I'm just doing drawing for a hobby and to have fun, well, I can just do it when it feels like fun. But if I actually want to develop it as a skill for any reason, whether it's to earn money or just for the satisfaction, then look, gosh, how many kids would ever learn the piano if we said, if you don't feel like doing your piano practice, don't bother? Well, there'd be no one playing the piano, because every kid would be not bothering. So it's a bit like that. If I want to leave it up to my feelings, that's fine. But really, any discipline, I mean, improvement only really comes from discipline, and any discipline can be hard at times. That's why it's discipline. We call work work because sometimes it's not fun, and so um, um, yeah, yeah. So we need to persevere and learn what that's like. Um, uh, Shadow, is that Steve me, or is that the Steve who's on the? Is a Steve on the feed? No one's ever thought of me as being punk, so I'm assuming it's for someone else. Um, yeah, look, I love all the times. Flow experience on demand. I'm not sure what that means, Lance. How do you feel rusty after? Do I feel rusty after watching? No, because I think about it, and thinking about like I keep saying to people, the creative process is not just the pen on the paper; it's in our mind, and so we can practice the creative thinking part without putting pen on paper. And part of the reason I think I moved forward pretty quickly in my oil painting was because I'd had 20 years sitting on the motorway, driving for an hour and a quarter each way, twice a day, for all those years, looking at the light in the canopies of the trees, wondering how would you paint them? Because I found them absolutely beautiful to look at. And I found the light effects stunning. And I would think, how could you paint that? What would you do? How would your technique go? What colors would you use? And when I started doing that, I realized that I was in a much further place with all of that thinking I'd done. And I think it's the same with drawing. If I look at the work of artists who inspire me in the right way, looking at how they create the effects they create, then that's all of that is something that I bring to the next time I put pen on paper. Yeah. Um, I am a grandpa. I have one grandchild at this point, which is lovely. Do I feel analyzing images and not drawing? Look, it can be. It depends why I'm analyzing them. But I think to analyze images, particularly if I have perspective issues, can be really helpful to see real life pictures. Because if you've watched a few of my perspective videos, you probably know that that a lot of them are not very helpful. And so it can be more helpful to look at real life and to work out what's happening there. And because that is kind of very practical. I'm just, yeah, and drawing in a public place can be hard. But if it's a place where we don't know anyone, again, why would I let the possible opinion of someone who I don't know stop me from doing something I really want to do? And that's just something that we have to learn, I think. Yep. Look. I mean, I still procrastinate every session. I'll walk around the house finding other things to do besides actually putting that first line on the paper. The first lines, the first brush strokes are always the hardest, always, and they get easier as the drawing progresses for all sorts of reasons. But confidence is one of the reasons they get easier. Oh yeah, Reg von Vassazart. What was the surf brand that he in the 80s and 90s, I think it was. Yeah. Uh, yeah, and the first time I did street sketching, I just found people either walked past and said nothing, or they said nice things. I never had a single Mambo. Yes, that was it. Not around anymore. I think all those brands have pretty much gone their way. But yeah, that was a fun brand. Look, perfectionism. Let's just look at that before I sign off, because perfectionism is a big one. It's such a destructive thing, and I think we see it most clearly when we're afraid to start something. We get to the point where the thought of perspectivism, where the thought of a mistake is enough to incapacitate us and make us not even feel we can start that without a single line on the paper. We think we're wasting our time, or we just don't want to end up with something that will make us feel bad because we don't feel we can cope with that, and we feel it's so certain to happen. And look, perfectionism comes from somewhere. Why is it that I feel like I can't make a mistake? Why is it that I feel like that learning doesn't involve learning and improving? I mean, if I improve, the very notion of improving means I'm not there at the start. And again, if I have perfectionistic issues, it can be indicated that I spend more time erasing wrong lines than drawing right lines, and that I scrutinize everything I do for mistakes. And then I end up just looking at each line almost as a standalone entity, when what I should be learning to do if I'm drawing, I think, is learning to see all of the lines together, producing the artwork together. Because in the end, my artwork is the sum of all the lines that are in it together. So I think that's just really, really important. Or if I start things and I don't finish them. I mean, another problem with perfection is if I start an artwork finally, and it starts to work out, I actually start to think it's looking really good. And then I increasingly become terrified that I'm going to wreck it and waste it. And then that paralyzes me so that I can't finish it, because I'm afraid that if I finish it, I'll wreck it. And look, I've had certainly, I mean, I talk about perfectionism because it's something I've had to deal with and had to learn to push through, and have to learn not to let it control me. And look at, if anyone feels controlled by it, we can get through it. But in some ways, I think perfectionism is this voice that runs in the back of our head, and we need to learn to give ourselves a new voice. We need to learn to answer back to that one and tell it to shut up, and to feed more helpful, so to say things to ourselves like, I'm learning, which means I won't get it all right. I'm improving, which is great, but it means I've got things I need to improve from, and that's all right. I'm learning, and it's like learning the piano. If I was learning the piano, I wouldn't, whip myself for hitting wrong notes. And so, it's the same. I can draw lines in the wrong place. I'm learning so I don't have to produce an artwork. And I think this fixation that every time we draw, we produce an artwork is often tied up to this sort of perfectionism unhelpfulness, that the idea is like a perfect thing at the end. And sometimes social media creates this as well. I have to have something to post, and I'm really drawing it so that I can post something, and that may not be a very helpful kind of. I'm not saying we need things to be perfect to post, not at all, but if we're trying to impress people with how perfect our art is, it may inhibit our art. It may mean that in the end we don't produce any, because it's too high a pressure that we put ourselves under. Kestrel says, drawing without care for the finished product improved his art 100%. Absolutely. That's what I'm saying. That's what I'm talking about. I mean, like, yeah. see it as a learning experience all the time. And then that 70s bike. No, look at my work and think he's just an old man who started doing it at 60. So imagine what I can do, you know, like there's no reason you can't do better than me. And I hope you do, you know, because you can stand on my shoulders, as the phrase goes. I mean, you can start where I'm finishing. You know, I took yeah, and I think Shadow, this is a helpful way of thinking, that none of us are going to get perfection in anything. Let's face it. Um, oh, you're just a young fella then in your 50s. You know, I think seeing improvement is the important thing. Pat Travers, boom. No, no, I'm not. Yeah, look, if you haven't liked this and you're liking it, then please hit like. And I'm just checking. I've got 284 subscribers to go to 100K subscribers. So since I've realized that, I've started paying attention to the numbers. So hey, if you haven't subscribed, please subscribe. And if you've got friends who draw, who you think would benefit from my channel, I mean, I don't want subscribers who aren't going to watch my videos. There's no point in that. But if you know people who do draw and who enjoy drawing and who are on a drawing journey, who you think would connect with how I do this, then please please tell them. Yeah, it's not about the numbers, but part of the reason that I can kind of do this and put the time into it that I do is because I have a monetized channel, and I do make money from it, and that means I can focus on it more than I otherwise possibly could. So yeah. Yeah. I'm looking at Discord. A few people have mentioned it and asked me to consider it. I'm trying to understand how it works and what the possibilities would be and what the overhead would be for me. Because I spend so much time online already, scrolling and posting and commenting. Yeah, but with perfectionism, I do think sometimes these fears get more control over us, I think, because they stay vague. And so, and I feel like the more precisely we can understand exactly what am I afraid of and why, the easier it is to deal with these things. And sometimes when we totally expose them down to their barest parts, we can laugh at them, you know, but like, why am I afraid of starting to draw? That I'll make a mistake. Okay, well, why am I afraid of making a mistake? What's that going to say to me? What reflection on me am I afraid that will be? What or am I afraid of people looking at what I draw? And why? What am I afraid they're going to say? And why would that be so devastating that I would rather not draw at all when I want to, than take the risk of hearing them say it? Like it's really helpful to force ourselves to address these kind of vague fears that we have that can totally, you know, drag us off the creative journey that we want to be on. And you know, like our creative journeys can get tangled up with just other issues we have about ourselves and self-esteem. And like, you know, and like with art, so often it's connected with an unkind thing a teacher said very early on. Maybe a teacher joked about one of our artworks when we were in kindergarten and the class laughed. And we'd never been in that situation before and didn't know how to handle it. And we kind of saw now that art is a danger because it can lead to humiliation. And yet art is an important part of who we are. And so now there's this tension. It wouldn't have mattered if I never cared about art, but sadly, it is important to me. And so maybe that's partly why the laughter hurts so much, even at that young age. And now that fear has kind of incapacitated me. So working out why making a mistake is going to be so terrible is important. And sometimes it can take us into places we've avoided going to, and that's hard too. But in my experience, the more we can understand why we're feeling something, then the more precisely we can address it. And often the easier it is to do that. We can see how it isn't really a place of fear. Like it exposes whatever it is we're responding to. The fog clears, and we can see that it's actually not worth the price we're paying to surrender to it day after day after day. So perfectionism. The 80s disco, no, the 70s disco. The discos was the 70s. And in the 70s, yes, we all went to discos in our flares and our paisley shirts and our shoulder length hair and our wide leather belts and our platform shoes. And it was great. I don't know what happened in the 80s, except that it wasn't nearly as exciting as the 70s. In the 80s, I was busy being responsible and settling down, but the 70s were a lot of fun. Yeah, and Lance, I'm not sure if you were there earlier when I talked about part of the reason we can get discouraged is because we don't know where we're really going with our art, and that can lead to confusion. Like, am I wanting just to have something to entertain myself with it, and I really enjoy the process, and I'm happy for it to sort of sit in a hobby sense, not in the sense of my skill level as described by that, but I'm just doing things for my own enjoyment, and I don't plan to sell them or exhibit. Or do I want to be an exhibiting artist? Do I want to have shows because I feel that's important for my art? Or do I actually want to make a living for it, which is different from it, which is different to those other things again? So having a clear picture of what I'm trying to achieve with my art. And yeah, Scott Christian, I've remembered the name, so I will. No, no, I never liked the Bee Gees. Not Saturday Night Fever, please. Please. Dead Poet Society. That was a great movie. Yeah, great movie. All right, so look, I think I'm just looking at the notes that I make. They're all, gosh, look, it's a wonder I'm still going, all those discouragements. I've still managed to keep drawing because most of those discouragements I've worked out because I've had to plow through them myself. So I hope that's encouraging, that we can get through these things, that we don't need to we don't need to kind of, I don't know, surrender's too dramatic, but be held back. Like we can sort things out and we can push on. I mean, there is the fact that we want to draw, that we get discouraged, and that becomes a problem. It means that we want to do it. And if you're listening now, you probably weren't listening at the start. And I started, well, basically everything I've talked about, Lance. I'm talking about, I mean, my channel is all about my journey and my personal experience, and the lessons, the way I teach, I'm teaching you the way I learned, because I'm not an art teacher. I mean, I was an English history teacher, so I never learned how to teach art. But what I did learn how to learn, though. And so I teach, if you like, the process I worked out to improve myself, and I hope it will help other people improve too. And from the feedback I get, it does. So with perspective and the fans and the fan pattern and stuff, I teach that because that's what I saw that was very helpful for me to learn. That's the way I thought about it. That's the way I still think about it. I think you asked me about the most important thing about perspective. I think eye level is the great under-emphasized thing. Perspective is about how things look from a certain position. So the key thing is always going to be the level of our eyes, because that determines exactly how things will look from this place. And so I've got a few videos that are just on eye level, and I really think they're worth watching, because if we don't fully understand eye level, we're always going to sort of trip up on perspective. And most videos give all this emphasis to vanishing points, and I think in a very unhelpful way. Um, uh, how artists deal with a peeved partner. I'm not sure I get that. Um, uh, oh, I see. Because because my wife has gone to bed without me, and I was thinking, why is he still talking? Um, yeah, yeah. Eye level is so crucial, and the important thing with eye level is there is one eye level thanks, Mortal. There is one eye level for every scene, no matter what's in it or how it's positioned or where it's positioned. All the vanishing points for everything in that scene will be on that one line. And often when I see it, when I used to see drawings that didn't look quite right, and I'd be trying to work out, now, why is this not right? When I was first doing videos, one of the things I did to prepare for videos was I'd find drawings that weren't right and say, well, what's not right? What are the mistakes that people are making? And one of the most common mistakes is that the one building will have two different eye levels. That the lines on the left side of the building will have an eye level at one point, and on the other side of the building will have an eye level at another point. And if there's another building somewhere else, it may have a totally different eye level as well. There is only one eye level per scene, because the eye level is the same for the whole scene. So I think that's so really crucial. What alcoholic drink I recommend? Oh, look, I can't drink much at all, or else I'm not doing anything. But uh, I tend to drink after I've done my art, because it's not very productive to drink before or during. Um, yeah. Uh, and of course, I'm an Aussie, so a glass of beer is always a nice, refreshing thing. Your focus on upcoming videos now, urban sketching and nature. Look, I really hope to get some videos out on learning, exploring watercolor. And I'm sort of, I can't decide whether I need to go off and spend some time learning watercolor before I kind of try and presume to make videos, or whether to make videos of the journey of learning watercolor. Um, yeah, so I'm partly wondering that. I've really enjoyed drawing nature. Um, I did get a video half produced of drawing a wave, and my Copic marker just, I don't know, released all its ink in the middle of the white patch of the wave when I was doing it. So that put an end to that drawing. Um, um, oh, Merlin, I'm thinking, why are you in a library? But then I realized it's not 10:30 where you are. And yeah, thanks. Really, really glad um, uh, to be a bright spot in the day. Thanks for coming on board. Um, uh, yeah. So yeah, look, I think I still do want to enjoy and explore drawing nature. I do want to get back to some sort of streets, I think. I was thinking more of some streets rather than buildings, like a more of a contextual focus. Part of my problem, though, is I just need to get some more reference photos, because I do only draw from my own photos, because then I don't have copyright problems, and I can post them on my community page, and people can use them. And I hope you do use them some of the time, and don't just, and look, if you watch my videos, I really suggest that you watch me draw, you hear whatever I've got to say, and then you go to the reference, and then you draw from the reference without then referring to my demo, because I think you learn more that way. And then after you've had a go drawing from the reference yourself, if you don't like the way your drawings turned out or you struggle with certain things, then watch the demo again. And you can slow it down at least to half the speed that I have slowed it down to. And I'll try and post a few more real-time videos on, because that can be helpful every now and then. Each ugly, beautiful step. You just want to see me fail, don't you? Oh, trust me, I'm very capable of that. Yeah. Okay. Well, thanks. That's nice to hear. Send me photos with permission. Yes, although I don't truly know. I mean, I'd have to take your word for it that the photos, firstly, really are yours and not just photos you really want me to draw. But secondly, what makes a good photo doesn't always make a good drawing, and what makes a good photo, that would make a good photo, would make a good drawing, isn't always a good photo for me to make a good drawing of. Because when I take photos of scenes, I'm also aware of, I guess, the way I draw, and some scenes and some kind of, like, every scene has its challenges, and I guess I do tend to have some parts of a drawing that I feel like are strength areas and other parts that I know are weakness areas because I haven't had much practice or development in them. So that's yeah. It's easier to draw from my own photos simply because I've taken things that I feel I can make a good fist of, make a good drawing of. Google Street View. Yeah, look, I know people do that. I haven't done it. I don't know what the copyright issues with that might be, although I don't know that that's necessarily be a problem. Look, I don't think that's a problem if I'm just doing a drawing myself. I mean, probably legally it is, but when you start to post things publicly, then I don't want to have any copyright issues. Where's the phone? Good looking drawings. Look, I've got to say, if I'm honest, the first, when I began the drawing seriously in 2018, I did drawings that I thought were pretty good at the time that I see issues with now. And yeah, it was okay for where I was at, but it's, so I mean, my point being, like, when did I think? I think what we should be thinking is that the drawings we're producing now are our best ones, simply because we've had more time to refine and learn. So, but I look, if that first drawing of Notre Dame I did with my daughter on the 7th of July 2018 hadn't turned out, then I'd probably still be painting trees and I wouldn't have done any drawing. So, I mean, it did turn out in lots of ways. Well, you've got to realize, a name like nobody else. Most of the photos that I took, that I draw from, I did not think I would be drawing from. I mean, if it's not a local Australian scene, I didn't know I was going to be drawing from it, because when I was taking those photos, I had no idea that I would be drawing architecture when I got back home. I thought I'd just be going back to the painting full time, and so. Yeah, that makes it hard because often my family is standing right in the middle of what would have been a lovely scene to draw, but they're there and I'm going to the side and trying to crop and all of that sort of thing. Or, yeah, if you have a particular purpose for a photo, it really does change what you take and how you take it. So, um, um, yeah, yeah, yeah. So look, it is 2 hours. Wait, there are some ads coming for some viewers, so we'll just stay a few more minutes so that I can get a little more ad revenue. Yeah. The effective details, it's where we're not trying to draw the detail, because most of the time when we look at something, we're not seeing all the detail. We see a generalized effective detail. And that's what we want to try and capture, because it's impossible to draw the actual detail. When we draw a tree, we can't possibly draw all the leaves. We have to draw the effect of the leaves. And I think that's the easiest way to understand it. But when but even with architecture, with ornamentation, we can't possibly draw it all, but we want to capture the effect. I do have another playlist of videos that are to do with drawing the effect of the detail, and some of them are like trees, and some of them are for architecture, and some of them are for people. So there are different contexts where you can see the principle applied. So yeah, and I certainly need to do a new trip, and I think that's on the cards. So um, yeah, yeah, but it's a shame. The best time to go is now, yeah, and escape the Australian winter. Um, so, all right, look, thank you very much for joining. Let me just give you an update on the. Oh, okay. Well, I've got another 10 subscribers since I last spoke to you. So I'm 99,726. So almost there. What an amazing time. Thanks for being a part of things tonight. It's been great. You've kept me up way too late with all your questions and comments, and it's been great. I really enjoyed it. I hope it's been helpful for you. And I'm kind of, my aim is to do something my Sunday night every week, most weeks. So my Sunday night around 8:30ish my time, Sydney, Australia time. So if you check what that would be, probably Sunday morning for most of you. Don't know. Anyway, thank you very much, and I'll see you next time. But whenever you end up drawing, however you end up drawing it, have fun. Bye.